where before I get into this, I want to say I am not Republican or Democrat, uh,
Mhm.
and I am so disillusioned with political system in our country that it's hard to even talk about. Um, but what I think you were getting at right there is something that I see is diversity at every level except thought, at every level except worldview. We want a Jewish person, an Islamic person, a black person, women, transgender, blah blah blah. But you all got to think the way we think, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
You
there's a
can't have. There's no diversity of thought. There's no diversity of ideas. You've got you. We'll be diverse across genders, across sex, across race and nationality, as long as y'all agree to our ideas, as long as you agree to our policies.
I think that's very spooky. That's not a good look. Especially if you hold different beliefs and then they will try to paint you or put you in a box of anything that they don't like. So if
Right.
you
Oh,
don't
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my God. Try.
you're a conspiracy
Are
theorist,
you white? You're not white, are you?
no.
Well, try being a white dude in this world.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it's tough. Honestly, like I look like every minority
You fucking Nazi pig, blah, like every. Oh my God, you'll get it all, dude.
because
But I mean, and it's even if you're just suggesting something out of love,
yeah,
it's crazy. It
it's
is
fear.
crazy out here.
And I think a lot of that fear is the problem is it's because of our media, and it's because our media is controlled. Because I personally don't believe that our government even exists. Um, I fully believe that this company or this I mean it's a company. This country has been taken over. That's the reason why I left the Air Force, by the way. Stopped doing my special intelligence job because I realized that like, we were the Empire from Star Wars. And on the inside, I mean, we had a patriotic reason to do whatever. I mean, the story that we told ourselves was not the reality of what was happening. And when you started to question things, and when you started to engage with that truth, that reality of like, hey, like it's more than the propaganda. Like there are people dying over there. It's not even about dying. It's not even about that. It's the fact that they're going to send you over there, and the reason why they're sending you anywhere is not what you think. It's almost
Not what
always
they're
money.
telling you. That's for damn sure.
And so in a sense, they're throwing you like you are the fodder. They're selling you to go make money. Like you're the bitch. And as much as there's a lot of like gun ho, I love America. And I have a heart that like I want to protect the things that are sacred. And I truly would rather see peace than war any day. But I'll defend my home. But I realized that we weren't defending our home. We were going to other people's homes and setting up all types of stuff. And the thing is that like we also do things to ourselves and then blame it on other places so that we can
Mm.
engage with
Like
them.
9/11.
Yes, actually very much so like 9/11. You know, that was actually one of the topics we talked about in the last podcast. I asked you what do you think 9/11? Like what happened? You didn't give me a straight answer, but we talked about a lot of different things. I would love an update on that question. What do you think
And
happened on
I'm still in the same spot. So actually, I have a podcast guest on here. She's been on 3 times now. I've been a guest on hers once. She goes by Human Vibration on Twitter. Um, Her theory is starting to become more and more appealing to me, and that is that
Mm,
there was nobody in the Twin Towers at the time. It was explosives. The airplane was CGI. All the people jumping out of the buildings was CGI. She's a big CGI. She's one of the big CGI conspiracy theorists, which I don't like the term conspiracy theorist. Truth seekers, I think is at least more accurate. But again, I don't like branding things like
mm,
that.
mm.
Organic movements are hard to brand because branding itself is not like an organic mechanism.
No,
Uh,
yeah.
but but I will say, as far as and then it's funny because the very last episode I did, I proposed this idea to my guest, and he was like, "She's fucking stupid." Even though he believes it was a conspiracy, he was like, "Of course there was. It really happened. Like, yeah, we were lied to about it." And he's like, he's watched Zeitgeist and Loose Change and stuff like that, but he thought that was just way too far out there that there was not even people in the buildings. But I have not looked into the evidence personally enough to decide one way or another, but one of the things that she said, and that could be looked into deeper if somebody wished to do that, was that all the hospitals in New York in that area were like expecting all these people, firefighters and all the rescue people and all the injured bodies, right, to be flooding these hospitals, and like nobody showed up.
Mhm. Mm.
Um,
That's
so
as unbelievable.
again, my guest on the last podcast, he was like, "Well, you can look that up. I'm sure they were." Well, have anybody actually looked it up? I don't know. I haven't even since then. But knowing what I know about the degree that they're willing to go to lie to us, it wouldn't surprise me. Is what I'm getting at. It wouldn't
Well,
surprise me
also
if there was nobody even in those buildings. The plane was CGI. The people jumping out of the buildings was CGI. It was a controlled demolition. The Twin Towers would be the hardest one to believe out of those because Building 7 clearly was that way, right? The Pentagon, clearly some suspicious shit going on with the black box security footage going missing. So the CGI story there, and controlled demolition there, and the fact that they covered up all the debris at the
yeah.
Pentagon. I mean, again, her theory kind of aligns. The hardest one to explain would be the Twin Towers because you see the footage of the planes going into the buildings, et cetera, et cetera. But all the plane crashing in the field, Building 7 and Pentagon, those are easy to explain according to her theory. And then the
Yeah.
Twin Towers, based on what she said about the hospitals being prepared for this rush and nobody showing up. I'm not saying I believe her outright, but like knowing what I know about the length that they're willing to go to deceive people, it just would not surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if
There was a
the
lot on the
people who,
line.
if people that made loose change were paid by people to to get them on this other conspiracy line of thinking. And then you have the conspiracy theorists against the standard story and all of its bullshit because it was just a CGI psyop. I mean, I mean, again, I don't know,
I
but
will say,
that is seeming more and more plausible to me.
I think that's a very colorful theory, and I believe that the answer is definitely. I think that the CIA definitely had something to do with it. There's a reason why
I
Hollywood.
will to give my other guest credit. I was like, we're definitely being lied to, and he was like, oh yeah, we're definitely being
Yeah,
lied to.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. We all
we can
agree
all
there.
agree on that.
We all agree there. I actually do agree with you a lot on the CGI, by the way. I mean, they faked the moon landing, like, and we still haven't
And
figured
that
that
wasn't
shit.
even CGI. That was just Stanley
No,
Kubrick magic.
it's real bad looking. Like, if you really look, you're like, who the fuck was taking the video? That's it. That's it. Like,
I mean,
who?
it's like covered in
So
aluminum foil and shit. Like it
take,
looks goofy.
but
It looks goofy.
so
Anybody who believes that that made it to the moon,
yeah,
I
it
want
does.
what you're smoking, bruh.
Yeah, we can't do it anymore. We can't go there anymore for some reason. We
Oh,
can't go back.
but we did. We did. Did
Oh
you
yeah,
see hear about this?
when?
Just like a couple weeks ago, they
Oh
claimed it.
yeah.
There's no footage or anything, but they claimed it.
Okay.
You didn't see this? This was
No,
big news a week or
I've
two
been
ago.
under a rock. Like, I've been so busy with
Ah,
my
let
own.
me see.
Tell me all about it. Yeah,
Landing
I'm interested.
on
We made it back
moon.
to the moon, huh?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Let's see. It doesn't look like I can share my screen. I was going to share my screen, but yeah, NASA back to the moon. Yep. So here we go.
Shit.
Uh, it's funny. I searched NASA back to the moon, and it's still acting like we haven't been back. But they literally, it was just in the news a few days ago. Okay, so I guess it wasn't a person flight or whatever,
Okay.
a manned mission.
Mhm.
But either way, I mean, is space even real? I don't know.
I I actually have big things about space too. I don't think that shit's real the way that we say it is. I think there's a
Well,
lot of things
people
like
simply, can
theory.
space exist in a vacuum? They
Exactly.
say space is a vacuum, but space doesn't exist in literal space doesn't exist in a vacuum. So how is space a like that? Some things just don't add up, man.
I mean, if the sun is made of fire and the space is a vacuum, how's the fire lit? Like, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things to go. I mean, the chemical reaction you can say, sure, but like, there's a lot of weird things that don't make a lot of sense. And it's a lot of it, like we said, is it goes down to what we were programmed as kids, what the narrative was when we were young, and then it's up to us
But
as
all right,
grown up individuals
I
to
think you can
question.
agree with what I'm about to say. Yes, yes, that's exactly what I was just about to get to. Is I am the first one to say I don't know for a lot of this stuff, right? But
Yeah.
I think that makes me a lot less dangerous than the people who know that, oh, of course the Earth isn't flat. You fucking uneducated, you know what I'm saying? Like dimwit, whatever the fuck they want to call you. Of course, of course space is real, you dumbass. Of course dinosaurs, fossils are real. Fucking conspiracy theorists.
Do you believe that the Earth is?
Like I don't know. I think we live in a hologram. I think this is a video game.
Yeah, I think
So
that's the best way.
when you start looking at it that way,
Uh-huh.
a lot more possibilities come into play. Because if
Yeah,
we're in a video game, then it's like you could just be change. Every individual can just be changing the channel. All of these realities could exist in one way or another. It could be flat Earth, sphere Earth, space does exist. Sun is local, sun is not local. I mean, if we're in a video game, the video game could just be tricking everybody. Just like if a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, did it really fall? I mean, perception. I think we live in a perceived world.
I think it's a
I
perceived
think
role
that
based off of those narratives, mimetic.
yeah,
It's the same
yeah,
thing
and
tells.
I've talked about we've I've talked about that on the podcast before too. The reason that I talk about worldview and I emphasize questioning your worldview so much is that when you think about us ourselves in a computer analogy, right? Um, what we believe is like our programming. And so our output is going to be based on our programming. The way that we interact with the world is going to be based. We're not going to do things that go against our beliefs. We're not going to
Mm,
act in ways that don't align with how we see the world and what we believe about the world. But if the way that we see the world and the things that we believe about the world are false or based on lies, then
mhm.
our output is not going to be aligned with reality, to,
Yeah,
to say the least.
well said. Yeah, I think in that situation, the only way to escape the game is to meditate, control the construct. It's the only thing that
And
you have to.
when you say meditate, I'm assuming, and I want to be, and instead of assuming, I'm going to ask you the question that you mean silencing the voice, escaping
Eh,
the storyteller.
that's the beginning. That's the beginning. Um, I do a lot of meditation, and that's the first step. Is yeah, you gotta make peace with that guy. 'Cause he talks a lot. When you finally get to be on the, because it's like, for me at least, my brain for the longest time felt like I was in control of my body, but my mind was just on fire, like doing whatever it wanted to do. And I felt like it was like two,
That's
like the
Toltec.
Pisces sign, like two fish going in different directions. I feel like we're just fighting for dominance. And one guy is like party, and the other guy is like sleep. The other one is like question your reality. The other one's like Christianity. Like it was a lot of internal conflict. And it wasn't until I had to sit down and I was like, okay, well, what do you have to say? Like, yeah, I mean, you talking all this time. What do you really have to say? I'm listening. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna take notes too. Let's get to the brass tacks. Like, what are you trying to tell me? And pretty much it told me that I believed a bunch of shit about myself, about the world around me. That like that inner voice was actually trying to help me. It just like kind of how we talked about it. Like it doesn't talk to you very kindly if you don't know how to speak well to yourself. It's really hard to want to even listen to yourself because he's an asshole. But it's you. It's your asshole. you know.
That's where, okay, so everything
But
that you were saying right there was
but
reminiscent of the Toltec for me. But when
uh
you said it's you,
uh-huh.
it's only you if you agree.
Truth. Yes, there's more to it. That's why I
Because
you hit on that.
if you're the one talking,
Mhm.
Who's the one listening?
You! We have a bicameral mind. The two sides of ourselves. We have this little tiny person called the ego that we think we understand, which is we that lives in the fiction of the mind.
But
We live
I think you're right when the listener agrees.
Yep. I mean, that
But
makes
I
sense.
think they can be two different entities if the listener chooses to disagree.
Yeah. There's I mean, there's you can identify with everything that thing says. 'Cause I mean,
And
there's
then
many
I
things.
think a lot of those thoughts are not necessarily yours. Like you might be regurgitating them mentally in that moment, but that thought didn't originate with you. That's just something that you're picking up on as a transmitter, right? As an antenna, you're picking up on that thought at that moment because you might have heard it from somebody else at some other point in time. You might have read it, you might have heard it on TV, whatever.
Mhm.
But because of whatever you're experiencing, that thought came into your mind. But you could disagree with it.
Yes.
And at that and in that example, I don't think that voice is you. It
But
kind of
oh, it
is. It
is.
kind of
But oh,
is in the
it
sense
is.
that you're regurgitating it,
Uh-huh.
but you're regurgitating somebody else's original idea or thought, and then you yourself are disagreeing with it. So you're choosing to not identify with that idea or belief.
Why I have this idea that we're all actually very mentally connected. Like more so than we like to be comfortable with actually. And so when that moment happens where your mind is telling you something that you disagree with, I mean that's part of that mental chatter. That is the mind figuring out whether it's real or not real. Because I do believe our brain.
I guess what I'm getting at though is we decide who we are.
I was just about to say, we are Turing machines in that sense. Like we are biological Turing machines trying to determine reality from fiction constantly based off of what we've absorbed in our past and what's currently happening in our moment, and then also our thoughts about that moment. That blends together to create this thing that we believe is the right now. But I fully believe that when that's why I believe the power of conversation is so strong. I believe that we actually do a lot of work on a spiritual level when we have these conversations because we're clearing up a lot of that chatter, especially people that are in cities. You know what I mean? We're so closely together. Think of how intermeshed our I call it the noosphere, but the sphere of ideas, of human ideas, is
The new sphere,
intermeshed.
yeah, yeah. That's an idea. That's a I do have a philosophy degree, which I kind of have my own. I don't know. I think academia has actually done more to discredit philosophy and philosophical thinking and spiritual thinking than it has to um, benefit it. However, it does still exist, and so it hasn't been completely snuffed out yet. The
Mm,
PH in PhD stands for philosophy of. So, like when you get a PhD in medicine, for example, that means you've gotten a degree in the philosophy of the doctorate of medicine or whatever. Um, Philosophy is literally the first discipline in education in human history.
mm,
So, at its root, I love philosophy. However, I have this kind of yin yang relationship with it because I think the way it's taught actually discourages people from engaging with it. And I think that's by design because
mm,
we're all naturally philosophers. Like humans are naturally philosophers. That's part of our purpose is to not. And I don't even like the word think. I think it's. I believe. I feel that it's more of just a cultivation of awareness. That's a really good way to word that. Actually, a cultivation of awareness. Right. So philosophy is actually a verb.
mm,
You do philosophy. And that's why I
mm,
like the word cultivate because it's not your thoughts that you're cultivating per se, it's how you use your thoughts and how you turn your thoughts off at will
mhm,
in certain situations, right? It's more of a wisdom thing than an intelligence thing, right?
mhm.
And I think, the garbage man that I interact with when I go to the dump. I think, people that are in these professions that stereotypically might be thought of as lower IQ or less prestigious careers, they're philosophers. I see them as philosophers, and somebody that went to a prestigious fucking bullshit ass rich people liberal art college and took philosophy and doing philosophy with those people, it makes me not like philosophy as much because I feel like they're actually turning the regular person away from philosophy, which is the worst thing that you can do for philosophy.
Yeah. When it comes to philosophy, at least the subject as a whole for me, I know I'm like I mean I got it. But when it comes to like I think that philosophy is one of the most important things we can do is develop a personal philosophy. I'm not saying that you have to keep it forever, but I think that at every
Oh,
point,
change is the only constant. If you
yes,
want a philosophy that reflects reality, your philosophy better be changing with reality.
yeah. But there's actually, I mean, there are some people who don't change their philosophy based on reality,
No, yeah,
and they
yeah.
can still do exactly what like it just really depends. Like because philosophy is to me it's like changing up the video game that you're playing. You know what I mean? Like if you have a philosophy on life that like okay, my philosophy of life is to help whoever asks for it. Like let's just say that for like a simple example. Like my Nindo. That's my way of living. You know what I mean? That's my philosophy. I'm here to help. And when I see someone and I can do it, if it doesn't take away from my ability to do it in the future, then I should do it. And that's my philosophy. Now, life is going to challenge that philosophy and it will either break
Yeah. And
or
I think civilization itself is set up to discourage people like you from helping others.
yeah.
Like our society is set up to beat you into submission to the point where you only have time and energy to help yourself.
I see it. I see it.
That's what makes people dependent on the system, right?
Yeah.
That's why they don't want people living tribally, and they, genocided all the indigenous people because they lived in such a way that everybody helped everybody